Cassian Holt lifts one finger and says, $1, my claim stands. The crowd laughs like spurs on tin. The woman on the platform doesn't move. Burlap covers her head, rope cinched neat beneath her jaw. The auctioneer's mallet taps her shoulder as if she were a mule, not a person. Going once, he sings, eyes on Cassian, though a man who bids a single greenback best have a spine like cottonwood. Cassian keeps his hand raised. He feels every eye in Cedar Trace crawl over him. The loner from the North Ridge, the lumberjack who eats by a stump fire and sleeps beside his saw. He has no taste for crowds, but the moment he saw the rope around the woman's wrists, something in him walked forward without asking permission. The woman shifts, trying for breath. The sound is small and human. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Going twice, the auctioneer purrs, leaning so close the burlap dents around the woman's cheek. Come now, folks. She's fit, quiet, and the sheriff swears she's willing to sign. Labor contract, 7 months even. Who'll give me 5? Who'll give me 3? "A 2!" Someone calls, drunk on spite. Laughter answers, but no coin follows. The sheriff stands beneath the platform, hat low, thumbs hooked in his belt. Sheriff Mosley and his new brand of law, the kind that sells people by pretty words and stamps it with a county seal. Cassian has no respect for the man, but he watches him the way a woodsman watches a coiled snake. He's not here to show his throat. "Dollar's an insult," the auctioneer sniffs. "So is a rope," Cassian says evenly. "My dollar's clean. She leaves with me under contract and the rope comes off now." Mosley raises his chin. "You signing to feed her, house her, keep her safe under your roof and our law?" Cassian's mouth is dry as unplaned cedar. "I am." "You got witnesses?" Cassian doesn't turn, but he can feel the smith, old Harlan, somewhere to his left, his only honest nod in this town. Harlan's eyes are good. "Good enough," Mosley says. His fingers brush his revolver just once. "Auction's done." The mallet falls like a hammer on bone. Cassian steps to the platform and cuts the rope from her wrists with the small blade he keeps under his belt. Her hands are narrow and bruised, knuckles scraped. When he reaches for the knot beneath the sack, she flinches. He stops. The whole town leans forward like a wheat field in one wind. "You can take it off yourself," he says softly, voice meant for her, not them. "Or I can, your choice." For a moment, she is still. Then her fingers, shaking, stubborn, find the knot and worry it loose. The burlap peels back. Black hair tumbles in a matted braid. A strip of cloth covers her eyes. It's tied tight, like someone meant to keep daylight out for good. The cloth is stained pink at the edge, raw against the bridge of her nose. Her mouth is cracked but steady, and her chin tilts like a woman who remembers how to hold it. Cassian feels the ground shift under his boots, blindfolded. The auctioneer's smile curdles. "Sheriff, I wasn't informed." "You were informed to say she's quiet," Mosley says. "She's quiet." He flicks 2 fingers. "Get her off my platform." Cassian steps closer. "Ma'am," he says, letting her hear the care he can't afford to show his face. "I'm Cassian Holt. I offered to feed you and keep you safe under my roof. That's my word in front of this town. You don't have to come if you don't want to. You say no, we walk, and I'll fight for your no." Her head turns toward his voice. The blindfold is so tight the cloth doesn't even waver. "You paid $1 for a fight?" Her voice is husky, desert dry, and proud. "You must be the loneliest man alive." "I am," he says before he can swallow it. "But I don't buy people. I make contracts, and I don't keep anyone who doesn't want to stay." Silence folds over them. Cassian is aware of everything. The sun striking the courthouse bricks, the smell of horse sweat, the creak of Harlan's leather apron. He waits. The waiting is a saw blade, held just shy of the log. Finally, she tilts her chin. "Cut the cloth." He does, careful as trimming a dovetail. The blade slides under the knot and lifts, and the cloth loosens with a whisper. She doesn't tear it away. She slides it off and keeps it in her hands, as if what it covered belongs to her first. Her eyes open. They are not ruined, they are not empty. They are silver grey, like creekstone, inflamed at the edges where the cloth bit and squinting against the light. She blinks once, twice, and holds his face steady in her gaze like she has been staring at the dark for days and refuses to be surprised by what SS in the light. Cassian breathes out. He hadn't known he'd been holding the breath. "Can you walk?" he asks. "I can walk," she says, as if the question insulted her spine. "I can sign, I can work, but I don't go anywhere with a stranger who wann't say why he wants me." "I wanted the rope off," Cassian says, feeling the weight of the crowd again, the heat of Mosley's eyes. "And I wanted to give you a door that opens inside, not just out." Big words for $1. Her lips twitch, not a smile. A test to see if his words will hold weight. "Come down," Mosley snaps. "Contract's ready. He'll sign, she'll mark, and I'll be rid of both your headaches." "Hold," Cassian says. He lifts his palms so the town can see they're empty, so she can feel that emptiness in his voice. "There's a rule in my house. Anyone who eats my bread gives me their name first. Not some name a sheriff writes. Not a brand anyone burned into you. Your name." The word hangs there. She wets her lip. Names get taken. "Then we start with a new one you choose," Cassian says. "Either way, I won't tie you to my house without it." A murmur ripples. The auctioneer thinks there's a trick he can sell twice. Mosley thinks there's a pretense he can call fraud. Cassian thinks only about the woman standing barefoot on splintered planks, chin stubborn, hands bruised, eyes like stones, polished smooth in creek water despite the grit around them. She breathes in until her ribs lift, breathes out. "Cut the rope on my ankles," she says. Cassian kneels. The knot is tight and ugly. He works it loose, and only when her feet are free does he step back enough to give her space to choose a direction, down from the platform or not, toward him or the sheriff or no one at all. She steps down the 3 stairs alone. Mosley's boots scrape. "The papers." He thrusts a folded document at Cassian with one hand and holds out the other for coin. Cassian takes the paper, passes the sheriff 2 half-dollar pieces. He would have emptied his pocket if it meant getting her away from the rope, and tucks the contract into his vest. "Not yet," he tells the sheriff. "We're not signed until she says a name." "County law don't mention poetry," Mosley says, smile thin as wire. "It does mention consent," Harlan rumbles from the crowd. "Woman says her piece, sheriff." Mosley sneers, but steps aside. The town loves a show, and he knows Cassian won't run. Not with half the men on the street holding iron and thirsty for the first excuse to point it. Cassian holds out a canteen. "Water," he says to the woman. "Clean." She takes it, drinks slow, and caps it like someone who has rationed thirst before. Then she squares herself in front of him. Not small, not large, just a person braced against a wind that has blown too long. And she says, quiet but clear, "You want my name? You sure you know what a name buys?" "It buys my word," Cassian says. "It buys my protection until the contract ends, or you choose to leave. It buys you a room with a door that locks inside, and it buys you the truth from me when you ask it." Her gaze holds his. "Then listen close. The name I've carried is not one I chose. It was put on me like a saddle. The men who used it took more." Cassian's jaw aches. He hadn't realized he was clenching it. "You can set it down," he says, "right here." She nods once. "Then I will. I'm keeping the first part because my mother's hands made it. The rest can rot." She lifts her chin higher, like pushing her voice over a ridge. "I am Coralie. If you mean your word, say it back to me." "Coralie," Cassian says, and the name sits in his chest like a small flame that knows how to grow. "Under my roof, under my word." Mosley explodes in a clap. "Enough romance. Ink your fool names." They move to the courthouse table, dragged into the street. Cassian signs, neat and slow. He writes less than most men, but he writes clean. Coralie takes the pen. Her knuckles whiten, slacken. She doesn't tremble. She writes the name she chose, crooked but strong, as if she were building letters with nails and a mallet. The sheriff stamps the page with a thud that feels like someone closing a lid. "It's done," Mosley says. "You take her, Holt. 7 months to the day." Cassian folds the paper and tucks it inside his vest, over his heartbeat. It feels like an oath where it rests. He offers Coralie his arm. She looks at it, considers, and takes it with a grip that makes plain she's using his balance, not asking his permission to stand. Together they walk through the alley split by the hotel and the feed store, past the barber's chair, where hair curls like shed rope on the floor, and out to where the town S-dust gives way to the first tough scrub of the ridge road. They do not speak until the town is far enough behind that their words will be theirs. "You live alone," she says. Not a question. A judgment she's already made. 3 rooms, Cassian says. 1 with a lock inside. 2 saws, a mule, and a stove that sulks in winter. I'm not easy company. "What made you buy me?" She doesn't gild the word. Maybe that's why it doesn't bruise as much when she says it. "I saw a rope," Cassian answers. "I didn't like what it could teach a town if no one handed it a lesson back." She walks, eyes forward. "Men teach towns plenty." "So do women," he says, and lets the quiet hold. The road rises. The ridge throws its shoulder between them and the south wind, and the scent of pines comes through, the resin and shadow that Cassian loves like some men love hymns. His cabin sits on the north face, where the ground levels like a held breath. He points as they crest a small swell. "There," he says, "the pump's stiff but clean. There's a tin tub if you want it." She stops, sudden. Cassian stops too, not wanting to drag her with his momentum for any reason whatsoever. "Before I step over your threshold," she says, "say it to me plain so I can carry it like iron. What happens if I decide I don't want your roof?" "You leave," Cassian says. "I'll walk you to the road, or ride you to the next town if that is your call. No one will be sent after you. If the sheriff comes looking, he'll only find my heel marks pointing where you went and my door closed. I can't give you the law's mercy, but I can give you my own." She studies his face as if looking for cracks in it. "And marriage." The word drops like a horseshoe into the dust, heavy and ringing. Cassian swallows. "I don't barter vows," he says. "But I've seen men give a woman a last name just to make towns shut up. If you ever want that kind of cover, I'll offer it. Not for show, not to cage you, because a paper and a ring make fools behave." He meets her eyes. "Only if you ask. Only if you say your name while you ask." She nods once, muscles loosening so slightly it would be easy to miss. "All right." They walk to the porch. The steps complain he should replace the middle board, and when he opens the door, the cabin breathes sawdust and iron and stew from 2 nights ago. He steps aside so she can enter first, so she can see the door has a key on the inside, so she can feel the lock click under her hand if she wants it. Coralie crosses the threshold and pauses, eyes cataloguing. The bed with its patched quilt, the shelf of tools polished by use, the small carved bird on the mantel that Cassian whittled and never showed anyone, because showing the soft things of a man is a way to get them stolen. She turns the key in the inside lock just to test the feeling. The click is a clean sound. "You hungry?" he asks. "I got beans and bacon, and bread that could be used to stop a wagon if we run out of rocks." The corner of her mouth almost smiles. "Beans will do." He sets a pot on, hands moving in the muscle memory way work does when it's asked for comfort. He finds himself talking about firewood and mule stubborn stoves and the trick of boiling pine pitch to seal a leak. She listens the way people who've been robbed listen, using attention as a shield until they decide it can be a chair instead. When they eat, she holds the spoon like a promise to herself. She doesn't ask for seconds, but she finishes everything, and then looks at the crust like she wishes it was softer. "I can make bread," she says, almost to the table, "if there's flour." "There is," Cassian says, "and a Dutch oven that behaves better than the stove." After the meal, Cassian shows her the small room off the kitchen. "Your space," he says. "If you need the corner to be a better corner, tell me and I'll move the bed. There's a trunk. It's empty. It's yours even when you leave." She touches the lid. "You sure about giving people things to carry away?" "Everyone in this town carries more away than they bring," he says. "I'd rather choose which weight I hand out." She stands in the doorway, fingers on the jamb, and the cabin feels for a breath like a photograph he doesn't own. A woman braced there, sunlight on her hair, the room waiting for her to decide if it's a room or a pen. "Cassian," she says, and he looks up because hearing his name in her voice does something strange in his chest. "There's an iron taste to that, Sheriff. You made an enemy." "I already had him," Cassian says. "I just gave him a reason to say it out loud." "You'll need more than reasons when he comes." She lifts her chin. "If I'm working here, I'll earn my keep beyond washing and bread." Her eyes flick to the axe leaned against the porch rail outside the window. "Teach me to split wood clean, not ragged. Teach me the ridge trails that lose men who don't deserve to find you." Cassian nods. "At first light. I'll fix your hands after with salve. Blisters lie about what they're doing to you. I prefer honesty." "Honesty hurts less," she says. "Sometimes," he admits. They spend the afternoon building small mercies into the room. A peg for her shawl, a nail for the lamp, a folded piece of cloth under the shaky table leg. Each thing says a small word that means more than it looks. Toward dusk, the mule brays. Cassian goes to the door and sees a dust ribbon on the lower road. 2 riders. The lead figure has a hat brim like a straight lawman, ease, and a coat too clean for work that matters. Mosley. Cassian says soft enough that the word won't travel loud enough that Coralie will hear it, where she arranging the few things she owns into the trunk like she intends to take them out and keep them out. She comes to stand beside him. "Do you want me to step aside? I want you to decide where you feel strongest," he says. She looks at the porch and shakes her head. "Inside, with a lock, feels like a story he'd write for me." She steps outside, onto the porch, into the open. "Here," she says, and plants her feet. The riders pull up short of the yard. Mosley hooks his boot over his saddle horn, lazy as a cat near cream. The man beside him, Deputy Crail, has a face like a blacksmith, anvil, and the eyes of a boy who never learned any game but kicking what smaller. "Evening, Holt," Mosley calls. "Evening, Miss. Coralie, is it?" Her chin lifts on her name. "It is. Lovely. See, there's been a complaint." Mosley eases his horse a step forward. "Seems a certain citizen claims you owe him money. Claims he has papers of his own on you. Now I don't want to disturb a domestic scene. We'd re-all for home and hearth in Cedar Trace, but the county can to be harbouring fraud." Cassian steps down off the porch. "You stamped a contract today," he says. "Your ink's not even dry." "True enough," Mosley says, smile oil smooth. "But the county can't impair previous contracts. That's a federal phrase, Holt. I learned it from a travelling judge. Means if she's already bound elsewhere, your paper's just kindling." Cassian's hand hangs by his side, empty but ready. Mosley flicks his eyes to Coralie. "The citizen will be here in the morning. Well respected, too. Staked his claim up in Kingsmere. A shipping man." His smile widens. "He says her name isn't Coralie at all. Says it's Lark. Says when she speaks that name out loud, she belongs to him, body and soul." The porch board under Coralie's left foot groans, the way wood does when weight finds its weakness. Her face doesn't move, but Cassian sees her left hand close around the porch post hard enough to blanch the knuckles. "What citizen?" Cassian asks. Mosley tilts his hat brim. "Guyan Pike." The name lands like a stone dropped into a well. No splash, just a fall that keeps falling. Cassian doesn't blink. I don't know him. Coralie's mouth opens, closes, opens again. When she speaks, the words come through her teeth, not past them. I do. Mosley watches her like a speculator watches a vein of gold reveal itself by accident. Ah, he says softly, like a man who's heard the first chord of his favorite song. Cassian looks at Coralie. The world chooses this moment to shrink until there is only the shape of her breath and the place where her hand holds the post. He keeps his voice meat and potatoes plain. Do you owe Guyon Pike anything you want to pay? Her jaw flexes. I owe him a grave. Mosley laughs, delighted. Well now, this is lively, but until the citizen arrives with his papers, and I do love papers, Miss Coralie, is it? You two will stay real quiet. No leaving, no riding. If I catch either of you on the road before sunrise, I'll call it flight and put irons on it. County law. Your law, Cassian says. Our county, Mosley corrects, and wheels his horse. Duskicks, the kind that settles in hair and thought. When they're gone, the evening breathes again. The pines let go of a smell like clean knives. Cassian turns to Coralie. You can leave tonight, he says. He said no riding. He didn't say no walking. There is a cattle path he doesn't know that'll take you into the draw. If you want to go, we go now, and I won't step on the same dirt you do in case he comes measuring footprints. Tell me yes or no, and I'll match it. She looks at him with eyes full of heat that isn't tears. No, she says. I'm tired of running. I want to stand. I want a name to stand in. If I leave, he wins twice, today and again. Then we stand, Cassian says, and we make our stand so clean the town can say it didn't see. They work through the dark. Cassian cleans his rifle with Coralie, reading the steps from his memory. The things he learned in the timber camps, when a rifle is the difference between supper and walking home hungry. She gathers kindling that will flame fast without smoke. They stack tools as if neatness could be armor. They speak in low sentences that don't waste powder. Near midnight, when the stove's hum is a cat sleeping and the mule has settled, Cassian hears it. A single hoof on rock in the draw. Then another. Not Mosley's measured clatter. A loner's careful steps. Coralie hears it too. Her hand finds the edge of the table and doesn't shake. Guyon, she breathes, and there is a shape in the sound of the name, fear and fury married under one roof. Cassian lifts the rifle and steps to the door. He doesn't open it. He listens to the sound unspool. Hoof, stone, breath, silence. The moon slips out from behind a bank of cloud just enough to lay a pale stripe across the yard. A rider steps from the dark into that stripe. He's young for a man with so much confidence in his spine, his coat cut fine enough to gleam. He dismounts without looking at the stirrup. People who don't need to look at stirrups are either good or arrogant. Maybe both. He doesn't knock. He lifts his hand to the latch like he's used to doors obeying him. Cassian opens before he can touch it. The two men stand with a lung's width between them. Evening, the stranger says. His voice is butter poured slow. I'm here for what's mine. He tips his chin toward the shape of Coralie inside, her profile drawn in moonglass by the window. Lark, he says louder. Come say your name. Coralie steps beside Cassian, shoulders squared. My name is Coralie. The man smiles like she has pleased him by performing a trick. For now, he says. Tomorrow, you'll say the other. He reaches into his coat and draws out a folded paper with a ribbon crushed into it. Cassian doesn't look at the paper. He looks at the man's eyes and sees what he needs. The look of a person who thinks ownership is a religion and its priest. You're not crossing this threshold tonight, Cassian says. You can bring every paper you have in the morning, and we'll read each one aloud in front of the smith, the preacher, and the sheriff you've bought. But if you take one step toward my door now, you'll meet a choice you won't like. The man's attention slides to the rifle, then back to Cassian's face. Threats are cheap, he says. Not from me, Cassian answers. Guyon Pike, because who else could it be? Laughs softly. He tucks the paper away. You can't protect what wants to be taken, he says. People like her were made to be a certain shape. Coralie's breath is a blade. Say my other name and I'll show you the shape I was made. Guyon's eyes glitter. Lark. She moves, past Cassian, into the yard, no weapon in her hands, only her name said right. I buried that name. Her voice climbs to the ridge. You won't dig it up. Guyon's smile doesn't change. He lifts 2 fingers and snaps, and the dark behind him blooms with movement, men stepping from brush, the shape of iron in their fists. 5. No, 6. The kind of number that aims to make a fight look like fate. Cassian raises the rifle. Coralie takes 1 step closer to him, not back. Guyon's gaze flicks to the porch rail, to the axe, to the door with its inside lock measuring. Then he looks back at Cassian and speaks so softly the pines themselves lean to hear. Marry her, he says. Do it now. Do it without her true name, and when I take her back, it'll make you smaller than you already are. The word hangs between them, the word Cassian offered like a shield when the sun was higher and fear was a different animal. He looks at Coralie, not at the men in the dark, not at the muzzle flashes he can feel coming like storm static. Your call, he tells her, and the steadiness in his voice is something he has to pick up and lift with both hands. You say it, I'll say mine. We make a ring of our porch boards and call it a church. We do it now, and we make it mean something those papers can't touch, or we stand here without a word and fight clean until we can't. Coralie's eyes are not silver now. They are iron. Her breath is calm. Her hand finds his sleeve just above the seam, where the fabric is strongest. I'll say it on one condition, she says, voice level. You want my name, both of them. And then you want the one no one knows, the one I choose next. Cassian nods. The world narrows to her mouth, shaping whatever she will shape. She lifts her chin and speaks, clear as the ring of a new nail driven true. My name was Lark, my name is Coralie, and the name I choose to be married under is... This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Edda, she says. The name lands between them like a brand pressed true. Smoke, sting, permanence. Edda. The sound fits her jaw, fits the set of her shoulders, fits the way she has been standing since the rope came off. Cassian says it back at once, like catching a thrown knife by the handle. Edda. His voice steadies on it. Under my word, under my roof. Guyon Pike's smile thins. Sweet, he says. No preacher, no paper, no witness but the mule and the pines. Witness me, old Harlin calls from the shadow by the lower fence, where he stood silent as a post the last 5 breaths. Smith hears iron. I hear this. And me, a woman says from the trail, Mrs. Dunn, who runs the laundry behind the hotel, hips strong as anvils. She steps up into the moon with a bundle on her arm. I see with both eyes, and no sheriff bought them. Guyon's gaze flicks. Annoyed, his men failed to keep the shadows empty. Have your barnyard vows, he murmurs. Then, to his men, without turning his head, break them. They come like wolves who forgot they were dogs once. 6 shapes, 3 to the yard, 2 angling to the porch, 1 skirting left toward the window. Cassian doesn't waste the rifle on a guess. He aims clean and shoots the porch rail just beside the closest man's hand. Splinters pop like snapping corn, and the man jerks back with a curse. Warning spent, Cassian pivots and chambers again. Edda doesn't retreat. She drops to one knee at the top step, snatches the axe in both hands, and presents the haft across her forearms, the way you brace a beam to take a load. When the first man lunges, she uses not the blade but the butt, driving the hickory square into his sternum. He hollers, air punched out, and tumbles backward down the steps. "Right!" Cassian calls. Edda shifts without asking what he means. The second man's shadow leaps, the window man, and she heaves the axe headfirst into the porch post. Wood crunches, steel bites. The haft holds like a wedge, barring the window with a sudden lattice of oak and iron. The mule bawls from the lean-to. Old Harlin's boom of a voice turns into metal song as he swings a length of bar he didn't have a minute ago. "Two on your left," Mrs. Dunn calls, and produces from her bundle a length of line with stones knotted into it. Laundry work turned sling. She whips it once and lets fly. A stone cracks a knuckle's worth of news into a man's wrist. His pistol clatters to the yard. Guyon watches, still smiling, as if the ugliness is a show he paid for and expects to enjoy. He doesn't move. Men like him keep their boots clean, while other men collect dirt for them. Cassian fires again. A man screams and goes down clutching a leg. "Deputy Crail!" he yells, voice into the dark. "You going to tell the sheriff how you watched this?" Crail shifts, spooked by the idea of his name in the air, and shows himself behind the rain barrel. Cassian swings the rifle up, sighting not to kill but to stop. Crail shoves his hands high. Enough noise rolls down the ridge that Cedar Trace must hear it. A window light flares in the distance, then two. Harlin, panting, shoulders one of the men toward the gate with a shove that speaks fluent Anvil. "Go home and tell your mother you got whipped by laundry and lumber," he grunts. Goyon's smile doesn't falter, but he raises his hand and the remaining men peel back, steps careful. "Morning, then," he says, voice silk again. "With the sheriff and the papers, you can play at husband tonight." Cassian keeps the rifle steady. "Morning, then," he echoes. "With witnesses you can by the dozen, and a preacher who reads fine print aloud." Guyon's gaze slides to Edda. "I was right in the square this afternoon," he says, like admitting a small and harmless sin. "You do look better with your eyes open, Lark." "My name is Edda," she says, and Guyon's smile gets its first crack. He mounts without a stirrup glance and rides off clean, taking his wounded pride and limping men with him. Crail lingers one heartbeat, memorizing faces he'll write into a false report one day if he gets the chance, then follows. Silence folds back over the cabin lot, like a tarp spread smooth. The mule stamps twice and settles. Cassian lowers the rifle. His hands shake now that they're allowed to. Harlin wipes his mouth with the back of his hand. "That was work," he says. "Got any coffee, Holt?" Cassian exhales a laugh that tastes like iron. "I got something that thinks it's coffee. Come morning, you'll tell the truth about what you saw." "Wouldn't miss it," Harlin says, and lopes off down the trail, bar on his shoulder like a second spine. Mrs. Dunn presses the line of her skirt flat, breath high in her chest. "I'll rouse the preacher," she says. "He don't like Mosley's jaw much either. He'll stand. You two—" She eyes the busted rail, the blood dark on the yard dirt. "Don't go falling asleep with your boots on. Men who make threats in the dark like to set fires." Edda nods. "Thank you." Mrs. Dunn's gaze softens. "I iron straight," she says. "I can spot a woman folding herself up small and call it out. Stand big, child. Good night." When the yard empties, Edda leans the axe free from the post with a hard twist and sets it gently beside the door as if putting a baby to bed. "Edda," Cassian says, trying her new name again because saying it puts the world in the right order. Inside. They bar the door. They don't undress. They pour 2 cups of what Cassian conceded was coffee and drink it like medicine. The stove chuffs. The window holds. After a while, Edda sets her cup down and looks at her hands. "They'll come with paper," she says, "and the paper will not be a lie to the letter, only a lie to the bone." "I figured," Cassian says. "You still want to be married to a fight?" she asks, eyes on the scar at the base of her thumb. "I've been married to fights," he says. "They don't keep you warm, and they don't bring you water. I want to be married to you. The fight comes with you. I'll make room for both beside the stove." She breathes out, something between a laugh and a small unwrapping. "I don't have a ring," she says softly. He looks at the mantle, at the small carved bird he never showed anyone. "I can make one," he says. "Pine won't do. It breaks. I've got iron nails and a rasp. I can bend one smooth and file it round. It'll smell like the shop and stain your finger until the preacher blesses it with something better. She lifts her hand, bare and bruised. Do it. He does. On the porch, in the dark, between the two of them, he heats a nail red in a small coal pocket he keeps for pitch hammers, the head flat against the anvil block beside the door, then bends it around a dowel he uses to true hoop handles. The rasp sings as he rounds the join. When he brings it inside, it catches the lamplight like a small star that fell into his palm. Your finger, he murmurs. She extends it. The iron is cool. It slides home and sits there like it always intended to. Edda's breath breaks on one small sound. All right, she says. Morning, we speak to Cedar Trace. They sleep in their boots after all. The mule doesn't bray. No fire tongues the wall. Dawn comes pale and practical. Cassian makes eggs that taste like eggs, and bread that tastes like apology, and Edda eats both with vinegar hunger. Then they walk down the ridge with the contract folded in Cassian's vest and the ring on Edda's hand flashing like work metal in the first light. Cedar Trace's square is busy already. Word outran them. Mosley stands on the courthouse steps with a face like someone practicing benevolence in a mirror. Guyon Pike waits beside him in a coat cut sharp enough to slice oranges, hat brim low, a folded ribboned paper in his hand. The preacher, Reverend Tolan, has his Bible open and his jaw set. Mrs. Dunn stands with her arms crossed, Harlin with his bar, and behind them the town. Barber, schoolteacher, freighters with their long whips, gamblers with eyes that measure every bet before it's placed. "Morning," Mosley sings. "A pleasant domestic, I trust." Edda doesn't answer him. She steps up to Reverend Tolan. "Sir," she says, "we need you to say out loud what marriage is in Cedar Trace." Tolan looks at Cassian, then at her, then squares his spine. "It's a covenant. Two people, their consent, a witness, and the Lord as witness higher. The law has its ink, the Lord has his eyes." "Good," Edda says. She turns and shows the ring. A hush goes through the square. "Last night I chose a name I consent to." He spoke it back. "Harlin and Mrs. Dunn heard us. We'll take your blessing now or in an hour or in a week when you prefer. But first, we'll deal with the papers that pretend to own my mouth." Guyon's smile could butter bread. "Charming," he says, and unfolds his paper with leisure. "Lark, Edda," Reverend Tolan says, as if correcting an unruly child. "The lady named herself. You will honor it here." Guyon's eyes harden, fast and private. He tilts the page for the crowd. "Indenture signed in Kingsmere, witnessed by Judge Caldwell, stamped by the county clerk, for terms of service not to exceed 1 year in return for passage, room, and he glances up and savors the next word. Training. A soft, ugly murmur ripples. Edda speaks before the crowd can thicken with its own heat. "I never signed that paper," she says. "My hand was forced onto a line while a man held my wrist and another man held my jaw." She taps the stamp with one finger. "And that stamp is Caldwell's. But Caldwell was not in Kingsmere that month. He rode circuit east for 2 months teaching new clerks not to embarrass him. Ask him." Mosley grins, delighted by the performance. "Judge Caldwell ain't here," he says. "I am." "Your stamp is here," Edda says. "And so is your clerk, who forged Caldwell S. mark on a day the judge was teaching in Abalone Station. Call her." She turns to the door. "Maybelle!" Her voice cuts like a saw discovering a nail where it shouldn't be. A woman steps from the shadow of the hall, apron ink-stained, face pale, the clerk. She keeps her fingers pressed tight to her ledger like a saint, clinging to a relic. "Maybelle," Edda says, softer now but sharpened. "Look at me. You stamped that paper because Guyon Pike told you he'd marry you, if you proved you could be useful to a man like him. He said he'd take you to the city. He said you'd never have to sniff Mosley's breath again. And he lied." Maybelle's throat works once. "I don't know what you mean." Her eyes flicker to Guyon, who smiles, tender as a noose. Say it plain, Edda says, stepping closer, so Maybelle sees only her and not the crowd, or he'll lay it on your head when he runs. And he will run, Maybelle. Men like him always have a rail car waiting. Harlin plants his bar with a clang in the dirt. Girl, stop helping thieves, he says bluntly. Mosley huffs. This is irregular. This is law, Reverend Tolan says, eyes lit like he's glad to throw scripture at a bully before breakfast. Bearing false witness, coercion, fraud. Maybelle's hands shake. She looks at her ledger. She looks at the town that buys haircuts from her brother and bread from her father. She looks at Guyon. He smiles again, patient as a snake. Tell them, May, he says. Tell them you made a mistake and I'll forgive you in private. Her mouth opens on his name, but she doesn't say it. She says, I falsified the stamp. The words hit the square like a shot. He asked. He said it was just a date wrong. I didn't check the circuit docket. She squeezes her eyes. I thought he said... Cassian steps forward, voice steady. Thank you, he says. You can fix a ledger. You can't unfix a man who uses people like ink. He tilts his head at Mosley. Sheriff? Mosley's face does a slow, ugly thing as he calculates which side keeps his hat on straighter. The crowd's sound has changed, not the shrill appetite for spectacle, but the hot, muffled noise a town makes when it sees its reflection and doesn't like it. He knows which way the wind is cutting the wheat today. Guyon Pike, he says, because saying a name is a way to try on power. You'll hand over that paper, and you'll stand quiet while Reverend Tolan and I examine it. And if it's as crooked as it smells, you'll be leaving Cedar Trace with the back of your coat warm. Guyon laughs softly. He folds the paper again, slow as Sunday, and tucks it into his coat. No, he says. The square stills. No, Mosley echoes. He's not a man told no often in public. His hand drifts toward the iron at his hip, like it can soothe his pride. Guyon tips his head at Edda. She's very brave, he says conversationally. You are all very brave today. But bravery burns down by supper time. Contracts don't, and neither do men with money. His eyes flick to the northern road. My men will ride in 10 minutes with a writ from a federal deputy out of Kingsmere. You'll find his seal a better fit for your taste. The crowd murmurs like a hive slapped. A federal seal cuts close, even for towns that have learned to mistrust seals that travel. Edda's jaw tightens. He's bluffing. Maybe, Cassian says. Maybe not. Either way, we don't stand still while he calls numbers. He looks at Reverend Tolan. Sir, will you bless what we said last night? Tolan lifts the Bible and his voice. Cassian Holt, he says. Edda. He pauses just a fraction, honoring the choice. Edda Holt, if she chooses it. She nods once, not flinching. Tolan continues, words plain, no lace. Vows traded in front of the town, call and response that feels like making a chair together, measure, cut, fit, no wasted motion. When he says what God has joined, there is a sound like a thing slotting into its own grooves. Witnessed, Mrs. Dunn says, loud enough for the sky to hear. Witnessed, Harlan echoes. Mosley glowers but doesn't interrupt. Too many eyes, too few pennies to be made any direction. Guyon claps, slow. Beautiful, he says. Now hand her over. No, Edda says, and the word in her mouth is not defiance, it's ownership. Hoofbeats, not one horse, many. The crowd's faces tilt like flowers. 3 riders in blue coats swing into the square, dust rising around the hooves like court robes. The lead man has a federal deputy's badge bright as a coin on his breast. Cassian's shoulder knot tightens. If the badge is true, the law just got taller than Cedar Trace. If it's not, Guyon is poorer at counterfeiting than he is at charm. The deputy reins in. Sheriff Mosley, he says briskly. Deputy Leander Wright, I carry a writ concerning a woman known as Lark. Edda, Reverend Tolan says again, and the deputy's eyes flick in surprise at being corrected by cloth. Wright consults the paper. Lark alias Edda, alias... He stops reading the list like stepping over something filthy. Indentured to Guyon Pike in Kingsmere, 1-year term. Absconded. His eyes find Edda. He's not cruel. He's tired in the way honest men get when their bosses aren't. You'll come with us, miss. We'll sort the paper in Kingsmere. No, Edda says. I'll sort the paper here. She lifts her hand. Maybelle, the docket. Maybelle flinches like she's been struck, then bolts into the hall and returns with a thin ledger bound in cracked calf. She thrusts it at Reverend Tolan. Circuit schedule, she says. Judge Caldwell's hand. Tolan sets the ledger against the Bible, 2 books holding a third truth between them, and reads, June to July, Abalone Station. August, he looks up. Not Kingsmere. Deputy Wright takes the ledger, lips moving in a private count. He looks at the stamp on Guyon's paper again, then at the ledger, then at Guyon. Something in his face alters, disgust turning hard. He slides the writ into his coat. Mr. Pike, he says, very polite, you seem to have a problem. Guyon's smile doesn't have anywhere left to go. You think I'm foolish enough to forge a federal seal? Wright taps the paper. I think whoever drew this didn't know Caldwell loops his C like a horseshoe. This loop looks like a fish. He turns the writ over. And you spelled therefore with an A ripple of laughter that is not kind. Guyon's men shift like a dog, realizing the meat he wanted has teeth. Mosley puffs up because now it's easy. Guyon Pike, you'll hand me that paper and your little ribbon and whatever pride you can spare. Guyon's eyes go flat. Sheriff, he says, honey gone from his voice, truth threading through like wire, you don't own me. No, Mosley says, for once landing on a line that sounds like a sheriff. But the county does. He nods to Wright. Deputy? Wright takes the paper. He does not cuff Guyon, not yet, but he positions his horse between Guyon and Edda in a way that says this conversation has a spine now. It should end there. The crowd senses it. It leans toward dispersal, to barber chairs and schoolbooks and sacks of flour. But Guyon isn't finished. Men like him always find a floorboard loose enough to hide one more snake. I will write another paper, he says softly to Edda, voice only for her, though the square's hush lets everyone hear. On another day, in another town, I will find the name you choose and set fire to it with more ink than you can carry water to put out. He smiles small. And the next man you love will not be so careful with his rifle. Cassian steps forward. You're done speaking to my wife. The last word lands like a rail spike. Guyon tilts his head, enjoying the spike as if it were a song. Then I'll speak to you. Holt, was it? You like wood. Remember the way it burns. He looks at Mosley, then at Wright, then at the town, already shaping a new version of himself that survives this one. We're not finished. Here you are, Mrs. Dunn says crisply, finished neat. The rest is somewhere else. Take your threat and go make it smaller by walking away from it. Wright nudges his horse. Mr. Pike, you'll ride with us to Kingsmere. Guyon swings up smooth. He and Edda lock eyes one last time, hers iron, his acid. He tips his hat to her like he's leaving a table willing to return for dessert. Then the deputies take him out of Cedar Trace, Mosley trotting after like a dog that can't decide if it's in charge. The square exhales. People turn in 2s and 3s, leaving sentences behind them. About time, and did you see his face? And Edda Holt, that's a good name on a sign. Edda stands very still until the last badge gleam is small. Then she lets out a breath that has waited in her ribs for years and leans her forehead for a moment against Cassian S. chest. He puts one hand on the back of her head, not to hold her down, but to keep the wind from taking anything else she doesn't offer. Come home, he says into her hair. They walk the ridge slow, not out of fear now, but because the ground feels different when a weight lifts. At the cabin, the mule lifts its head and huffs like it approves of paperwork done right. Edda washes, scrubbing until the water turns honest, and Cassian mends the porch rail, planing the splintered edge smooth. Later, when the day lies down and the stove ticks as it cools, Edda sits at the table with a scrap of paper and a stub of pencil. "What are you writing?" Cassian asks, playful, tired in his voice. "A sign," she says, "for the gate." She prints slow, careful letters that look like fence posts planted right. Edda and Cassian Holt. She studies it, then adds a line beneath. "If you come in darkness, come alone." He laughs low and warm. Fair. They sleep without boots. Edda dreams not of ropes, but of iron rings that don't tighten when you breathe. Morning makes coffee taste less like apology. Work grows, wood to split, pump to oil, a path to walk to teach Edda where the ridge breathes shallow and where it drops off sudden. Cassian shows her the trick of reading bark for water, the way ant trails predict rain better than barometers, how to strike a spark from a dull knife and a stone if your matches betray you. She learns fast, hands blistering, then hardening into the honest ache he promised. By noon, a rider comes, Reverend Tolan, with a small paper folded like a prayer. "Annulment notice," he says, smiling with the kind of satisfaction a man gets when he washes his hands and they come clean. Guyon S. indenture declared fraud, at first read by Caldwell himself, when Wright laid it on the docket. Caldwell likes the story of a clerk who confesses better than the story of a merchant who lies. He's compelled Pike to pay damages. Cassian raises an eyebrow. "To whom?" "Maybelle," Tolan says, "and to Mrs. Dunn for her slingstone." He winks. "And to the county for being a nuisance." He sobers. "And he has sent a word. If anyone attempts to seize you under colour of law for the next year, send for him by name." Uses a proper loop in his C. Edda lets out a breath that ends with a laugh she didn't plan. "Tell the judge I'll send him a loaf when I bake one that doesn't double as ammunition." Tolan's face softens. "You two need a wedding supper that tastes like more than beans. The ladies will fuss if I don't offer." Edda glances at Cassian. He gives the small nod a man gives when offered kindness that is safe to accept. "We'll come," she says. "But not today. Today, I want to learn the trail to the North Spring, and I want to fix the squeak in the door that will wake me before any foot that shouldn't be on my porch wakes you." "Good," Tolan says simply. He leaves them with the paper and the feeling that the town, for once, stood up straight. They hike to the spring. Cassian shows Edda how the ground feels different 5 steps before water shows itself, soft under the heel, cool at the ankle. She kneels, splashes her face, and comes up smiling, hair slicked back, eyes bright. "I used to think the only gold I'd ever hold was the colour of liquor in a glass I couldn't finish," she says. "This is better." He sits beside her. "You'll hold more." They walk home along the high path that looks over Cedar Trace. The town below seems almost gentle, roofs set like playing cards, smoke rising in thin straight lines. For a moment, the future sits near enough to see, a shop bench on the porch, where Cassian teaches a boy to play true. A small garden with string lines straight as hymn staves, a chair by the window where Edda reads in the last light and refuses to look up until the sentence ends. They reach the cabin, content, tired and clean. Edda lifts the latch and pauses. The door opens smoother than it did this morning. She frowns. "Did you oil it already?" Cassian shakes his head once and steps past her, eyes going to the hinge. The hinge shines where it didn't before. The squeak is gone because a careful hand removed it. On the table sits a small square of folded cloth. Edda picks it up with 2 fingers the way you do when you are ready to drop a thing just as fast as you lifted it. Inside is a button, pearl, mother of no, not pearl, something like it, whiter, colder, and a scrap of paper with neat, gentlemanly script. She reads, her mouth thins. "What?" Cassian asks, already knowing he won't like the answer. "It says, 'For the bride, I prefer doors that don't complain when I come through.'" She lifts the button to the light. The cold white catches it and throws it back flat. "This isn't pearl," she says. "It's bone." Cassian's hand closes, slow and deliberate, around the back of the chair. "He was here." "While we walked the spring," Edda says. She looks at the latch. "He picked it so clean I didn't feel it in the wood." A sound rises from the yard, quiet, wrong. Not hoof, not wind. A small scrape like a nail on tin. Edda and Cassian move as one to the door and look at the hinge. A hair-fine wire gleams along the jamb where it didn't to live an hour ago, stretched from the latch to a sack under the step. Cassian swears once, the kind of word you don't use unless it's earned. He kneels, traces the wire with the tip of his knife, and finds the tension knot. His eyes meet Edda's. "Powder," he says. "He meant to welcome us home," she answers. Voice calm in the way of people who have decided not to panic ever again. They don't open the door. They don't touch the wire. They slip out the back window like thieves in their own house, circle wide, and find the sack. Cassian lifts it with a stick. A small, clever charge sits inside, tamped with sand and malice. Edda exhales through her nose. "He rode to Kingsmere with federal irons and still had time to leave us a kiss." She looks at the white button in her palm. "This is a promise," she says. "Not the kind people bless." Cassian nods, anger settling into something usable. "Then we answer in kind, but cleaner." He glances toward town. "We tell right, we tell Tolan, and we lay our own lines." Edda closes her hand over the button. "No more running," she says. "No more waiting for papers to teach men manners. We teach them ourselves." She looks at the ridge, at the draw, at the trails she learned this morning. She sees where a snare catches a boot and leaves a pride unhurt, but a man rueful. She sees where a wire makes a bell sing on the porch instead of a blast under it. She sees where to carve their names into wood deep enough it can be sanded out by anyone's hand, but hers. She looks at Cassian and smiles, quick and fierce. "Husband," she says, tasting the word. "Wife," he answers, and the simplicity of it makes him feel taller. They walk together into the yard, into the work, into the day that ends later than most, because they decide it will. Unaware of the rider already taking the North Road around Cedar Trace at a gallop. No federal badge flashing this time, only a black hat, and a face like a letter held over a candle until the edges curl. He carries a package in his saddlebag. He carries a story about a train coming through 2 weeks early. He carries a second promise from a man who believes names are doors he has the right to open. And in the brush, just beyond the split-rail fence, something blinks that isn't eyes at all, a little glass circle set into a stick, pointed straight at the cabin window, as if someone somewhere wants to see without being seen. The hinge wire hums once in the breeze and goes still. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.